Back on February the 27th, 2020, a teary-eyed Carmack announced that fans would be unable to attend the tournament in Katowice due to the emerging threat from COVID. For him as much as anyone, a lot must be riding on the Cologne event that's currently underway. Because while there still isn't an audience, it marks the first time since the pandemic took hold that a tournament has dared to return to LAN, as opposed to being hosted from the safety of the internet. The last big LAN event that CSGO had was Flashpoint Season 1, way back in March 2020. And that event had its later matches shifted to online in response to COVID. The coronavirus has caused chaos. For CSGO, it has forced some tournaments to switch to online, and for others to be cancelled completely. Most notably the Rio Major, which was meant to take place last May, but which was moved to November before finally being cancelled when it became apparent that the virus was going to remain for longer than people had expected. Even now, it might not be the end of the virus, but it could be the beginning of the end for the widespread disruption that it has caused. We understand it now better than we used to. We've all had a year to acclimatise to the changes that might entail. And with mass vaccinations across the world, it's only a matter of time before life begins returning to normal again. An event such as Cologne 2021 has been planned with COVID in mind, so it will be interesting to see how they deal with the extra problems a pandemic can cause. I don't think we'll ever know the full impact this virus has had on CSGO. The changes to the tournaments are just the tip of the iceberg. I suspect it's also affected player numbers, first by increasing them when we were all stuck in the lockdowns. And now it may be working against the game, as things are finally opening up again, and we're discovering that there's more to life than our computer screens. But without an alternate reality where COVID didn't happen, it's impossible to know how much of an impact this has had. Take the esports side of things, for instance. Just the other day, Tommy posted online about how much money companies like ESL are losing from CSGO every year. They invest the money in the hope that the scene will become more profitable in the future. Losses were a problem for them even before COVID struck. But I can't see how a pandemic and the cancelled events that followed could be helping matters. This situation should be majorly concerning for everybody who's involved with the game. If it carries on like this, then large companies may begin pulling out of the game entirely, leading to a vicious circle to CSGO's popularity and its competitive scene. This would be catastrophic. Now, I don't think that tournaments returning to LAN will solve this problem once and for all, but it would at least be a step in the right direction. A major concern has been to the esports side of CSGO, because until this pandemic, LANs were the preferred way of settling the important topic of which teams were the best. It's different from playing online, the results of the matches are different. With LAN, there's increased pressure from playing in an unfamiliar environment, on an unfamiliar system, and teams tend to perform differently under these conditions. Also, since it's all done on LAN, it cuts out the lag, which levels the playing field and allows for players to perform under the best possible circumstances. It also makes it harder to cheat. Obviously this would be the case since the players will be sat in a room where they're being watched by third parties. That makes any kind of cheating harder. And lastly, there's just something about it being hosted in a physical venue that makes the event feel more official. If they can be bothered to host it for real, then I can be bothered to watch it. Or even to attend. I've been there, I've done that, and I can attest to the magic of it all. And without there having been an official physical tournament for quite some time, there have been fears that people will start losing interest in CSGO's esports scene. It helps the game's popularity to have large, definitive events a few times a year that even casual viewers can justify watching, just to see which teams are deemed the current best in the world. And IEM Cologne 2021 is a step towards that. It still has some way to go. There is still no live audience. Right now, it's simply too risky to invite people from all over the world to sit together in an arena. Inevitably, COVID is going to spread in those sorts of circumstances. Even without an audience, it's a massive undertaking. Over 120 players from 20 different countries are getting together for this tournament, as well as all of the coaches, managers, and all of the staff required to run the tournament. ESL posted on Reddit explaining how they've gone about preparing for this. Somewhere they have a 50-page document dedicated to managing COVID while keeping the players comfortable, which they'll reassess after the first week. The issues extend as far as ensuring that players can travel to the event without being turned away at the border, which can prove challenging when they're coming from far out places beyond the European Union like Russia and England. And ESL has established that this is a LAN event. There will be no compromises on that front. Players will not be asked to jump between the crisp, clean feel of LAN play and the less responsive feel of the online servers. The players themselves are all housed up in the 5-star Hyatt Regency Hotel in Cologne. I've been there. It's quite nice. Again, the Reddit post on this matter details the environment the players will be living in and the measures in place to keep everybody as safe as possible. Upon arrival, they've had to quarantine for 3 days and then to be tested multiple times over the course of the tournament. Their freedom to move about has been restricted, and there is to be no physical contact in the form of handshakes and so on for the first week. Meals are provided directly to everyone's rooms, and a zoning system will keep everybody involved in a safe bubble, and they can only leave the hotel after their involvement in the tournament has concluded. This is all to ensure that the impact of COVID on the event is kept to a minimum. And yet, things have still gone wrong. One of Team Heroic's players tested positive for COVID, and Jax broke his hand. But regarding the positive case, the whole team was put into quarantine with the intention of still participating in the tournament. But the quarantine was ended following further tests which came back negative. Apparently this might not even have been from a false positive, but possibly just from residual traces of the disease left after an earlier COVID infection that the player was recovering from. And now 2 members of Team Spirit have been quarantined after a passenger on their flight tested positive. The virus seems to be everywhere, but the show goes on, and all eyes will be watching how this tournament pans out, keen to discover whether a LAN event was a good idea, with COVID still so prevalent. And the clock is ticking. It's just over 3 months until CSGO's first major since COVID is scheduled to begin.